So we're responsible for everything, and this is obviously another. Say everything. Most things to do with universal credit. I mean, this is probably why I did enjoy the job sometimes, and I did enjoy it, was because there was so many different types of cases. So, like in the morning, you would maybe get somewhere. It's done by postcode. I'm pretty sure it's done by postcode how they divert the calls to agents. But you might get someone calling up and asking what date's my payment, or how much is my payment going to be, and then you might get someone calling up and asking. Like I've actually had this week a few times on Instagram where people have been messaging me screenshots of the result of their work capability assessment or their decision to say they've gotten or they've been registered as limited capability for work or work-related activity, and they don't understand if they've got it or not. So you maybe get a few of them, and then you might have cases where you're filling in, I think they're called NCC1s, and that's actually really quite harrowing because these people have been subjected to some horrific things. But it's just to give you an idea, and then you might have people where, well, as like I say, I mean, I made a job out of when people were calling up. I mean, even if someone had called up and said, look, I haven't heard from my work coach, or I need to speak to my case manager, while they were telling me what their issue was, I would actually be checking their statement just to have a look for the deductions that I mentioned, and then once they had finished with their issue and I'd obviously advised them on what they needed to do, I would then at the end of the call say, look, I don't mean to pry into your business, and that was the terminology, that was the dialogue that I used, but I would just like to confirm, can I just confirm that you have this benefit recovery in your name, or you receive carer's element or carer's allowance? And I mean, more often than not, they would say, no, I don't know what that is. And at that point, you would say, look, well, this is the issue with it. I've had this issue with a lot. Would you like me to put the payment dispute through? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you get people that have got serious money problems, and they're really are.
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is everything is costing a lot more than what it did a few years back. So you're getting a lot less when you go to the shop, so people are going to find it very hard to cope right now, and it's probably going to get even harder, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the problem with it, and this is like what
I feel like a lot of it's engineered though as well. So like when we look at society, like how, you know, where they're telling farmers not to grow, and then the next year they're saying, oh, we're going to have food shortages. It's all engineered in our eyes, you know.
Well, there's in Holland, which
Germany.
We call them.
Germany, they're protesting right now as well.
Well, they've shut the farms down there, and the farmers down there, and I mean, the Dutch have been supplying farming goods, food from farms for centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where carrots come from. That's why they're orange, and it's like they're shutting them down, and then, like you say, trying to say there's food shortages. That's engineered. That is conspiracy. Well, I should probably put it straight that I actually work from home. So all the agents work from home. We don't actually work in job centres. We are basically given it's a good setup they give you. It's a proper desktop. Everything was brand spanking new in the box. Like I was the first person to use it. So that was decent, that side of it. So I used to sit, that was over in the corner there, and I would just sit and take the calls. You would obviously log into a system, and you would have, there was about 12 systems you had to log into all in all to get all properly, so you could get everything up in front of you, and so they can monitor you and the calls.
Do they cover your bills? Do they cover your bills for like the internet and the calls?
No, absolutely not. No, the internet.
Oh, that's not nice.
Oh, I mean, I have to pay my internet, but no, there's nothing added on to my internet bill for anything like that. It's not like that. They take care of all that end of it. But we just sit and take calls. So usually in the end there would be like maybe 300 people in the queue. At that point, you're just taking call after call after call after call. You've obviously, what they do is they call up and they give you their security questions. You can get into their account, and you've got access to all the systems. So it's you actually do more than what you would do in a job centre, because, and I said this to a work coach once, that you maybe have to deal with a couple of vulnerable claimants maybe a few times a day, 3 or 4 times a week maybe. But vulnerable claimants that's what the job is for us. You're dealing with at least 10 a day. And the reason that I left was because humanity and humane practices were not the primary consideration when drawing up these processes, and it was becoming increasingly concerning, especially when I was bringing it up to management, that they were telling me not to question it. So there's a point where you can say to yourself, when I was saying it to myself, well, I am helping people, and I used to get some fantastic feedback, and I really did, and it kept me going, because there'd be days where somebody would be having a terrible time with it, they were having an awful time at the job centre, the case manager wasn't getting in contact with them, the agents weren't serving them, and these people are at their wits' end mentally, and then they would get through to somebody like me, and I would sort of point them in the right direction and tell them about any deductions on their statement and say, look, this is wrong, that's wrong, and you need to do this, you need to do that, I'll send this here and I'll send that there, and blah 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 blah, etc etc etc. And they would be over the moon with it. Oh, thank you very much, that's just absolutely amazing, thank you, Alan. And I used to think to myself, what would that person have done? I dread to think where they would have been if that person hadn't gotten through to me there.
Yeah, if he wasn't there to help them navigate that situation, they would have been lost.
Absolutely. And that was constant, Harry. That was like I say, 350 calls a week average. Probably maybe 300 calls a week average. 1,500 300 calls a week average. So you're 1,200 a month, and like I say, I mean, I'm comfortable to say that at least half of those were serious welfare calls. See, the thing is, Harry, it does help some people. Some people will watch my videos and have even commented to say, look, I've not got that problem, and it's true, they haven't. I've seen many people who are more than likely being covered with their sickness benefits, and there is people out there that do get what they need. So it does help some people if you're in the right situation, and it's usually related to having health conditions. This is why when you look at what's on like the news, and everything's about mental health and bad mental health, and I'm not saying people's mental health's not paramount, of course not, but far too many people use it as an excuse to sort of shun responsibility, and they use it to obviously get these sickness benefits. And these people probably are feeling down from time to time and don't want to go out, but I can tell you, sitting in the house feeling sorry for yourself and hoping to get a free sickness benefit, man, that'll destroy you quicker than any job will. And so yes, for some people it does help them, but see, for people that are healthy, young, single men, it's nowhere near enough. If you're a single woman that's got 2 kids, you do get extra help. There's certain things like the first £300, I think it is, or £360 of a single mum's salary or earnings doesn't get taken into consideration, and then after that they start applying the calculations to deduct their universal credit. But young men, they haven't got that luxury. It's just deducted straight pound for pound, well, 55 pence in every pound, sorry, and then eventually, as soon as a young man makes £368 on his own, that's his universal credit done for. So a lot of people, this is what they do. They don't do it. If they get offered a week's work somewhere, they won't take it, because there's really no point, because they're sort of getting a week of their time for no reason for a universal credit payment they're going to get at the end of the month anyway. So that's obviously a problem with it, and they do penalise people. I mean, they say that it pays to work in universal credit. Yes, it does for some people, but certainly not for young men. Absolutely. Digital problems. I mean, there are some people who are from the older generation that can work smartphones. However, there's there's a lot of people that can't. I mean, there is something in place for that. You can be a phone claimant, which basically means you obviously need to phone up and they set the claim over the phone, and then from there on out, what they'll do is the Universal Credit will send a note, like a text message to their phone. I mean, you need a lot of them. Well, they've not got smartphones, but they'll send a communication to let them know that they need to manage something on their account. At that point, they'll call up, and then the agent you speak to, they have to manage the account. But this is the problem: the agent can see the account, the claimant can't. So if you get an agent that's not pulling their weight, if you like, they can see things on there that the claimant may need to attend to, but that agent may be having a bad day or something like that and think, I'm just not mention it. And then a week later, the claimant will get another notification and they'll call up and they'll say, oh, you've maybe been sanctioned, or you've missed an appointment, or this had to be done, or that had to be done, because the agent has to manage the account for them. So that was a little bit of a problem. But yeah, definitely was an issue, digital. That's a good question, and it's actually something that people they often bring up. It's the training you get is just nowhere near sufficient to obviously handle the job. Many people leave during the first couple of weeks. I know I've trained with a girl myself who her first call was a suicide call, and people leave very quickly, and it's due to the fact that when they're in training, you get the DWP, you really only get access to the systems, and you get shown how to do the process, or some of them. But I'll be honest, and this is the truth, when you start the first 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, you're in your training period, so you're just in your living room. Yeah. You're obviously in Teams calls, and you're doing the training. But for a lot of the time, what we're doing, the trainer was sending us off, and just go and play this game. It had to do with the system of what was going on in the process. It was hard questions, but it was really quite useless at times. And I mentioned the platform and the communication tool we used for the case manager. We didn't even know how, my first week, I didn't even know how to use that tool because it wasn't shown in training, and yet we spent nearly 3 weeks in training playing bloody games and doing all this other nonsense, and yet I couldn't even use the tool to communicate with the case manager. I ended up having to ask one of my colleagues to show me how to do it, and that's how bad it is. And I'd said to, there was actually a friend of mine that came from the last company I was with, and I'd said to him, look, because he was in his training after, I'd finished mine and he was still in his, and I said, look, just concentrate on the handover tool and the platform, because that's going to be a huge part of this job, which it is sending communications to the case manager. Because what it is, it's like a tool, and it's got a drop down, and you'll obviously select what service centre the claimant's using, and it's got a number of things on the drop down of what it's for, and then you obviously leave a note to say why they've called, and the case manager's supposed to check it. It's a decent system if they actually look at it. And again, case managers, there's decent ones, but there's just not enough of them. So yeah, the training's not nearly, it doesn't prepare you for the systems, and it certainly doesn't prepare you for the mental side of things. And they actually did, they didn't withhold it that the calls were hard. Like the previous company I was with, who said all the calls were, it was brilliant, it was great, you'll be able to sit and drink your house road and drink cups of tea, that's how lovely it'll be. But it was just lies. They weren't like that. They were honest that it's going to be quite difficult, and you've obviously got to go through the suicide protocol and all that kind of stuff. You do go through all that, of course you do. But it just doesn't prepare you for it. It really doesn't. But luckily, I sort of thought, well, I'd grasped it quite early, and I was good at customer service. And the previous job I was at, I used to get the same kind of feedback. That's why I knew it would be good, and I could use it going into working for the DWP. And so I was quite lucky because I wanted to do it. But for the vast majority of the time, it's like any job. I mean, a lot of jobs, the training's not enough. You need to learn on the job, and this maybe being a bit harsh to saying that with the training, it's kind of like driving. You need to learn on the job after you've passed, if you like, and that's just basically what it is. And again, just because the training's maybe drab and maybe not up to scratch, it doesn't mean to say that you can't pick it up and be a good customer service agent, because I've proved that you could, and many others proved it as well. So yes, the training's bad, but it comes from being a good person. It doesn't matter how bad things are. You can always try and do the right thing, and hopefully it'll help people, and it does. Again, I wasn't actually at the job centre. I need to emphasise that, because, like, again, people misunderstand when they call you up. They think they're speaking to the job centre.
You was the call handler.
Just a call handler. You're just an agent and a call handler. That's all. How did it change? Well, it did. It changed for the fact that, and thankfully I didn't see this change. But last year, they were giving out a sort of energy grant every month. It was £66 a month, and it was very, very helpful to people, because they knew that was coming, and you got a code in an email or something like that. I can't remember exactly how they done it, but they would send you £66 a month, so they knew that was there. At the time I was leaving, I didn't hear it that they were renewing that, and I'm not sure. I don't think they have renewed it. So it's like, that was one thing that had changed. Well, at least last year, when people were calling up and saying, look, I'm struggling here, I can't get by, I'm doing this, and you can at least say to them, have you had your energy thing yet, your energy grant? Oh no, I'm getting that in a few days or whatever. That's okay, that's fine. And they would say, right, that was a cushion for them. But I don't think they've got that this year. So that's one thing that changed. Secondly, hardship payments, as I mentioned in the video, when I first started, all you would have to ask was 4 questions if you needed it for food, electricity, personal hygiene products, and there was something else, can't remember the other one on it. And they would just answer yes or no, and you would place it onto their account and send that communication using the tool that I mentioned to the case manager to say this person needs a hardship payment. However, before I'd left, they had changed it where actually we have to ask the questions. And as I said in the video, they were very invasive questions, and you were having to ask them twice. I mean, they actually asked this question: why haven't you got enough food? And it's like, well, they're calling up for a hardship payment, and you know, because it's your policy, that only sanctioned claimants can get hardship payments. So that would probably be one reason why they've not got any food. And it was the same. It was like, for energy, and it's like, and you're having to ask it at the start of it and the end of it, and then they're asking you, have you got anybody that you can ask for help? Again, you've got to ask at the start and then at the end, and I worded a little dialogue into it, as I said in the video, to make it less invasive. And I just didn't ask them certain things. I mean, there was one where they would ask you to get the claimant, or ask the claimant to cut down on their costs, or have they got any costs that they can cut down on, or any more costs, as it was worded, that they can cut down on. And I used to say, I presume you're like everyone else who's on universal credit and sanctioned and the cost of living crisis, that you've not got any further cost to reduce. And they were like, no, of course not. And that's how I used to word it. And it made it a little bit easier, but you're having to ask that twice as well, Harry. You're saying, look, ask it once and then ask it again at the end of the process, and amongst other things as well. And it's just horrible. It's just so horrible that the inhumanity of it is just. And I used to dread it when someone was calling for a hardship payment, not because I didn't want to do it. Obviously, you need to do it for them because they need it. But it was just the invasive questions. I mean, for the most part, it was okay because of the way I worded it. But if you got an angry caller, it wasn't much fun. And even using those words, it was very, very difficult. So I would say that those were the two things that I would say that would make the job harder and that would change. But with regards to changes in the system, it was that way before I started, and it will be that way now. So, but I'm just talking from my own experience. What would have made it a little bit more difficult? And like I say, thankfully the former one I didn't need to experience that. But that will be one thing that will be making it harder on people, no doubt. The most common one is that they call up and think they're speaking to the job centre. So the vast majority of people will call you up and they'll say, right, okay, I've got this problem, I've got that problem. You say, I can't do anything about it. All I can do is send this communication to your case manager or to the manager or whatever. And they'll say, can you not just go and speak to them? And you would often have to say, well, no, because there's none in my living room at home. So that is the most common misconception. Another one seems to be that, well, a lot of people, because people have been offered this benefits for so long that they call up, you would actually need to, there was a lot of times I would have to explain the benefit to them back to front, top to bottom, because it was so alien to them, and they actually thought they were getting into trouble if they were working and being on benefits. And you have to say, look, everyone does that, it's all changed now, and this is the point, this is how they're getting everyone onto these, and this slipped my mind, I forgot to put this into a video. If you're a couple, and well, let's say that you meet someone, you're a man and you're earning 50 grand a year, right? And you meet someone and who's maybe a single mum, she's maybe got a part-time job and she's on universal credit. And you let's say that you start a relationship with this person and it goes well and then you move in well. Even though you're making 50 grand a year, that man still needs to sign up to universal credit, because if you're living with a person and if one half of that partnership is on universal credit, the other half has to sign up to it. Yes, he won't have to attend as many appointments, but he still has to go in and verify his ID and agrees the commitments and all that stuff, even though he's making this money. Now, this was a comment, and I still don't know the answer to that.
That's entrapment. That's basically entrapment.
It's how they're getting everyone onto this benefit, Harry. It's another way they're doing it. And the worst of it was, I used to see them, and some of them where the person's wages or the person's earnings would come in to effect on the accountants and prohibit the person's, like the women's money. And then other times it wouldn't. And I used to ask, why is that different? Oh, it depends on the area you're in. I was like, what do you mean it depends on the area? That was the answer I got. I'm not saying that's true. That was the answer that I got. And it was just like, so not only do you need to sign up to it, if you move in with that person and you're making 50 grand a year, then those earnings are getting reported onto the person's account. And thus stopping the women's payment, which means the man has just moved into the women. The government expects that salary to take care of that family, even though he's only just moved in with them. It's madness. Crazy, and people were asking all the time, Alan, why do I need to sign up to this? And I used to say, at first to say, well, I don't really know, it's because you're part of a joint claim. And then I would obviously sometimes have conversations where I would say, well, it's the universal income they want everyone on. Just reminded myself there, I've actually had messages this week on Instagram where people, it was the person, it was a gay man, and this was happening all the time as well, dealt with loads of these, and they'd actually moved in with a woman who was just a friend, and the universal credit, the case manager would automatically assume that these two people were in a bloody relationship, and they had to fight tooth and nail to say, look, we are friends just, that's all we are, we're not in a relationship. We're just looking for any excuse to make things easier on them, to shorten up the money and all the rest of it. When these people, all they're doing is, and loads of people are doing it, Harry, great numbers of people are doing it now, having to live together. I'm doing it myself because of the price of things. It has to be done. How
I understand the system is, man, it's just a system that's based on fiction. And the money is just the control of the people, because a lot of people in jobs, well, there's a lot of people who love their jobs and put a lot of pride in their jobs, but then there's those people who go to work and they're like, when's break time, when's dinner time, when's home time, how much am I getting paid? And it's just that routine.
Absolutely.
So that just takes the care out of the job. It's like people don't care because of that. It's like politicians. Why, if they didn't get paid the wages they do, they wouldn't even turn up to the job. You know, they're only in it because of the wages behind the job. You know, people become doctors because their mommy and daddy said it's going to pay well. So it's always the money's the motive. So that's what
you mentioned that there, Harry. You mentioned that there just quickly. There's Ian Duncan Smith. He was pivotal in the creation of universal credit, as I understand it. He was definitely involved in it. I can't remember what he was. He'd had some high up job in the DWP anyway. This was in 2015 or 16, he said this, I think it must have been 15, it's round about there, he basically said that £10 a day, which is what it was at the time, or £8 a day was enough for claimants to live on until they got back on their feet. And then about 3 weeks after this, it might have been a little bit longer, they were in Parliament debating the salaries of politicians, and I think they were on about 80,000 at the time, I can't quite remember, but he was arguing in the same month, I'm pretty sure it was in the same month, that his salary at the time wasn't enough for him to live on with the current lifestyle that he was leading. But yet, just weeks before it, he was saying that people on universal credit are obviously are good to live on £10 a day or whatever it was. He had to resign because of it. That's the way they think of it. I would say the phone calls. I mean, if you've got between 300 and 500 agents, Harry, on the calls at any one time, that's not understaffed. If people done their job right, and I used to do it every day. So if I can do it, why can't others? And it was like I said in a video, it's nothing special. What I was doing, I was just asking people to do. Well, I was just doing what I would expect people to do from me. So maybe the job centres might be a bit understaffed, and it will be getting harder. See, this is obviously the problem with the asylum seekers as well. This also stirs hatred because you've got more asylum seekers coming in, and you think about people getting very angry who are trying to get through to the line, and they might be watching the news and seeing like, oh, there's an asylum seeker problem. That'll start hating them, and they'll start hating the asylum seeker because they think this is because of them, but it's obviously it's a factor in it, like, but it's not the be all and end all. But I wouldn't say the calls aren't understaffed. If people done, I mean, everybody can't do the job exactly the same way. Everybody's got their own way, their own coping mechanisms. But if you can just have the sort of philosophy or the perception that you're going to put the claimant first, then absolutely not. It's definitely not understaffed. With regards to the job centres and case managers. In service centres, I obviously couldn't say one way or the other if they are understaffed. I mean, it's the same thing there. If they've done their job the way some case managers and work coaches do their job, then maybe no, it wouldn't be understaffed. And it's actually something I've forgotten to emphasise in some videos. There's some fantastic work coaches out there. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story that. There was one day, there was a guy, he had mental health problems, and he'd gotten through to me, and he couldn't make his appointment. And I had sent off one of these platforms, and I'd sent these work coaches, look, he was doing something else or something, I had to go to an appointment or something. Well, anyway, she had tried to call him back, and she couldn't get in touch with him. And it was about, I couldn't say how long it was after that, but she obviously emailed me, but I'd gotten an email from her. And she was genuinely concerned because she didn't get in touch with him, and she was asking questions like, "How did he sound? Did he sound okay?" And I said he did sound okay. It was just, and then she actually got back to me after she got in touch with him to say yes, it was okay. He was just going to an appointment or something like that. Yeah. And there was a few instances where you got people that done similar types of things. That there's just not nearly enough people doing it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Don't always follow process. Do what's right. Treat the person as if it was a vulnerable a family member of your own, or if it was maybe even yourself, and you put yourself in that position, and imagine yourself in a vulnerable state, and that you just need help, and the person at the other side of the desk, what you would want them to do for you. That's called empathy. That would solve the problem. That alone would solve the problem. And obviously to make the decision to become a better person, always do what's right, no matter what the consequences. And I know it's easy for me to say I've not got any kids, I've not got as much responsibility as maybe some people, but we still need to do what's right, regardless of what the process is, because as we've established in this video series, Harry, the processes are inhumane, and while people do need to keep their jobs, people still need to eat as well. And you're not going to upset too many apple carts by doing the sort of things that I was doing. by just telling the correct or giving the claimant the correct information. Tell them what they're entitled to, and I know there's work coaches out there that do that. Of course there is, but there's so many incompetent ones that don't, and they tell a lot of lies, and they're not very nice to the claimants, and they're just doing things off their own back, and that's what I wanted to say as well. A lot of these people are doing these things off their own back. They're not given the correct information so they can get away with these things. And it's people, if you're in a vulnerable situation, and a lot of people don't like confrontation, they don't like to bring things up, they don't like to call the line, and I used to say, look, you have to do that, but it's just become a better person and just do the job the way that you would want someone to do it for you, and don't follow the inhumane processes. If someone needs a hardship payment and you've had a communication sent to you that this person needs it, then you need to call that person as soon as you get that communication, whereas sometimes they wouldn't hear anything back, and as I mentioned in the video, there's not, it can be quite difficult if you to even get your phone number changed, and as I said, that would be a big plus. Even just agents doing things like that as well. So although the system is bad, it doesn't need to be as bad as what it is if people just sort of followed those philosophies and those types of perceptions. It wouldn't be nowhere near as bad. Well, for starters, we're not allowed to dispense payments, and I said this many times that it's just as well, because I would probably bankrupt their accounts. So that was obviously one. Well, yeah, the whole thing again, Harry, it's set up to fail. So, and I said, someone said this in the comment section the other day there. Excuse me. Well, they basically said that when I had said that I was actually an outsourced call centre agent that was brought in as a subcontracted in, basically to obviously handle these calls, and he had basically pretty much said that he was appalled at that. That he didn't think it was right, and he asked me what I thought, and I said, well, that's I don't think it's right either, but we still get the same training. But that's true of every single company in probably the world now, Harry. I mean, most companies hire in, or most big companies anyway, hire in call centres to handle their calls. It's just a fact, and like I say, it doesn't matter who you speak to. You obviously need to ask if you've got a serious problem with an item you've bought. You need to say to the person you're on the phone to, I need to speak to a manager, can you get them to phone me back, because they're not actually working for the company that you're a customer of. They need to pass it on. So within that, there's not really anything you can do. I mean, like I said, I pushed the box. I was thinking outside the box all the time. I went against the grain, and I pushed the boundaries a lot further than I probably should have. But I wasn't bothered. But if you thought, and this is the point, this is why I've done it, because if you follow process, Harry, you are starving these people. That's it. You're not helping them. Not starving every one of them, but there is instances where if you follow the process, you're not going to help them. So if someone calls up and says, look, I've lost my payment today, because I've had earnings reported that I haven't actually received, I send a payment dispute, and that's it. That's all I can do for them. I can only just say, look, this person's had the wrong earnings reported, and that's me. I run through the process and I hang up and I move on to the next person, and they then need to wait for someone to contact them back. And that's true of almost everything. This is why I tried to do it and try to lend some of my experience to people to try and help them a little bit better and give them advice and information, so it wasn't as stale, if you like, and it did brighten up their day to maybe feel a little bit better. But the vast majority of people don't do it like that. And there is some fantastic agents there as well, I have to be honest. I mean, the team I was in the top team, and we used to have meetings, and they were obviously women more than men. They're more maternal, if you like, of course. But they had exactly the same problems as me, and they were wrestling with the same things, and they absolutely tried their 110% best. I would love to give them a shout out, but obviously can't. But they know who they are. So yeah, it's just the whole thing set up to fail, and unless you sort of think out the box and go against the grain, then there isn't going to be a lot you can do for them. That's what I meant in my last video when I'd said that you need to be a good person when you're doing this job. You need to do it the way that you would want someone to do it for you, because if you don't, you're going to be complicit in bringing in this dystopian agenda. Yeah, it's money is dependent, especially now, and I say this every Christmas. Some parents feel so sorry for them, like when they can't afford to buy some of these electronics, and you see the prices of Xbox and stuff like that now, and it's just you feel so sorry for them, because they obviously try and go out their way to try and give their kids what their kids' friends have got, and that obviously stops. That's just one tiny little part of it that can happen. I mean, what kind of system can report earnings basically on the day before we break up for the Christmas holidays, to say that they've received earnings when they haven't, and then they've got to wait 2 months to get their money back at Christmas, Harry? I mean, you imagine the ramifications of that for someone's mental health, especially if they've got kids. The first thing that needs to be done, and this is what I said when I was there, is the computer system needs to be sorted out with regards to the numbers that are getting with the incorrect numbers that are getting reported onto people's statements, the security issues at the beginning of calls, case managers, work coaches, agents, all have to follow the exact process, given the correct information. That would be a very good start. That would change a lot. And then obviously after that, you could start to look at, well, what I say, I can't remember if I said this in a video or it was one that I deleted and didn't post it, but when COVID started, they had put that standard allowance up to about £403 or something like that. Now, this was at a time, Harry, when it wasn't really needed, because nothing had really gone up in price. It just wasn't needed. It is needed, of course it's needed, but it wasn't needed in the sense like it's needed now. So they put it up, and then in 2021 they put it back down to what it was previously, which was about £300 and then they say, right, we need to increase this, and they increased it to 368 when I was still there. It was last April they done it, or last May. So they increased it to an amount that wasn't even what they put it to back in COVID. And that to me is psychologically hurting people, because it's like they've given them, it's so easy during COVID, everybody was furloughed and they were getting extra benefits and it was great, and watching Netflix and all the rest of it.
Not really, because they basically made people shut their businesses down and stay in their homes as prisoners, and says you can't even see your parents at the old people's homes. And then there was like, but you still got to pay your taxes. You still got to pay your council tax.
Yeah, I agree though.
And the road tax. And you can't use the roads. You're not allowed to use the roads, but you got to pay your road tax.
Yeah. But like I said, just the people who were furloughed from their jobs, who were getting their wages, and people on benefits. Yeah. And like I say, it's not an easy life on benefits. Things were just made a little bit easier. And actually, in 2021, when they brought it back down, I'd seen people up in Glasgow and that, and they were basically saying, because this has been dropped back down, I'm not going to be able to put my heating on, because they've become so accustomed to it, Harry, and they'd worked this extra £100 into their lifestyle, and then it was just taken away. And since they've taken away, everything, like you say, is just getting more expensive and more expensive and more expensive. And then when they put it back up, they didn't even put it back up to what they had previously. It was only £368, and that is just unbelievable what that does to someone's mind. I mean, they were already struggling. It's gone from quite easy and okay, I'm getting by, no problem, and then, oh, actually this is getting a little bit harder. And then, oh, it's getting really hard actually. And then people now, Harry, and I used to say this to people all the time, I just don't know how you're surviving. And they would often respond, I honestly don't know how I'm responding either. How I'm surviving either, sorry. But there was there wasn't all doom and gloom. There were some fantastic things. I'll tell you a quick story. Just a person that had basically, he'd had a bad time of it and he'd lost everything, and he ended up getting a back payment that he wasn't even sure of. He was only calling up to find out if something on his account, and someone had informed him that he had this big massive back payment, and I had said to him, like, I says, I bet you, do you believe in God? He said, I didn't believe in God 2 days ago, but I do now. They didn't even expect it. So that it wasn't all bad. I mean, this person pretty much lost everything: his wife, his business, everything. And we might need to edit that out actually, but we'll see. But I just want to tell you for the sake of the conversation, it's not all doom and gloom. And he was over the moon, and I was so happy for him. I thought some of the days you have and some of the horror stories that you listen to and that people tell you what's going on, and then they tell you everything, Harry. You're like a doctor, you're like a therapist, you're like the priest. It's just, they give you absolutely everything. They give you their problems, they give you the problems at work, they tell you what's going on with their kids, what their kids' healths are like, how their kids are getting on at school and how it's affected. They give you everything. They give you absolutely everything, and it can be a lot at times, and that you need to take on coping mechanisms. I run about 3.5, 4K every night. Well, obviously I need to do it through the day now because of the darker weather. But when I was in last summer, I had to run 4K every night because some days you feel like your head's going to blow off.
Yeah, man.
Because we averagely you'll take between 250 and 350 calls a week. That's each agent. And because like what they do is there'll be a set of coaches or a set of graders, and all they do is grade calls, and there is just absolutely no way they might listen to 5 calls per month per agent if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You think about that, maybe 10 if you're lucky. So even if you're taking 1,200 calls per month, maybe you're only getting 10 of them heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say they can't get them back. I mean, they can get them. They are absolutely there. Every call's connected to the person's to the person's account. So when someone calls up and their number will obviously connect with that person's claim, that person's account, they can obviously tell that someone's obviously on the phone. And it's basically what it is. I think, well, this is my take on it was that they didn't want to hear what was going on because there was so many bad agents that just didn't care. The only way that it got brought to their attention is when people like me, like I would notice in like history notes, and I was quite a dab hand at spotting when people were trying to be using deception and trying to say they'd done things when they didn't. Even if it was like, if I'd look at it, I'd think, oh, maybe not, maybe they have done it, but I would always send it to the manager anyway to say, look, this needs looked at. But there's very little monitoring going on, and that's the problem with it.
Also, guys, make sure to check out Alan McClemont's Discord channel. It will be in the description of his YouTube and his Instagram soon. I'm going to put it in the description of this video also. It will have useful links such as these, where you will have learning links. If you have any questions about universal credit, housing benefit, PIP, there will be independent threads. As you can see, there will be tutorial videos and all sorts. Here's the general chat. When you join, you will end up in here so you can introduce yourselves. There is live streaming, video streaming capabilities, so maybe he can host some talks amongst you guys and just make it a useful, information-full community. We'll have some music in here, we'll have some mental health support information, and for anyone who wants to be disruptive, we have a restricted area also. Based on your participation, you can earn ranks and roles to give you more access to other parts of the Discord, and you may even be able to become a moderator or an admin depending on your quality of input. So make sure you check out Alan McClemont's new system navigation Discord. Yeah, let's go. Ugh. Also guys, make sure to check out Alan McClemont's YouTube channel, where you can find some very useful information